Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the design and architecture industry in Australia, and it's quite a broad category when we look at it at a SEEK perspective. So we cover things like design and architecture within the building and construction industry. We also look at things like web and graphic design and Illustrators, which sits more within the IT field, and then you have your traditional roles like interior design and landscape design. So there's quite a mishmash of different capabilities in this discipline, but we'll go through all of them as best as we can in the next 30 minutes, and we'll try and cover off in each different angle. I'll also show you where we've sourced a lot of the research from so that you can go off on your own tangents and explore them at greater detail as well. Now, in terms of my background, my name is Narelle Stefanac. I'm the National Client Training Manager at SEEK. I've been with SEEK for 11 years, and prior to that I worked in the recruitment industry. So the intent and purpose of today is to really give you some insights around how you can better manage hiring manager expectations and candidate expectations. Because if you can use the data out of today, what it will do is it will position you in a way that you'll be able to push a little bit more to be able to control what that job brief looks like when you take it. And you'll be using not only your gut instinct, which you would have developed over the years of working in these disciplines, but be able to back it up with some independent data. And whether that be from the Department of Employment, which we use as one source, but also from SEEK, we can sort of overlay the two, so we can look at not only employment trends, but also what's happening in the real-time supply and demand of candidates as well. Now, I will give you the chance to ask questions throughout today's session, but if you would like to pose questions to me offline, feel free to reach out. You can email me, call me, tweet me, whatever you prefer. Really happy to answer as many questions as possible. If you'd like to ask during the session today, please type them into your question box, and I'll keep an eye on that. But if we get stuck for time, I'll make sure we park them and we'll answer them at the end of the session as well. Now, we've been running these industry insights for just over a year now, and we've covered a number of different industries. So if you sit more in the construction space, I'd really encourage you to reach out to me and request the construction industry insight. So we ran that last year. We also ran some on the engineering industry and also trades and services. So there may be some extra industries that you want to cover off on as a result. If you're sitting more on the IT side of the fence, we did run IT back in February last year, so again, let me know. And we've also run marketing and communications, so that might sit more on the graphic designers as well. So by all means, reach out, let me know what you want to get your hands on, and we'll just share the data and the insights with you. We do have a few more to run this year post today, so we've got about, 2, 4, 6 to come, and then we would have covered all of the classifications that SEEK runs against. So if you're interested in these, let me know and we'll make sure we get you invited. All right, let's jump into things. There's a fair bit that we're going to be covering, so I'm going to send you the slides. It's going to make it a hell of a lot easier. That way you don't have to scribble every piece of data down that's relevant for you, because I'm going to try and move through a lot of the messages really quickly. And the idea of today is to give you the data, give you access to it, but then coach you on how to read and interpret and analyze the information for yourself so that you can then start building out a bigger suite of conversations that you can have with hiring managers. So we're going to start with some industry insights, and these will be independent insights from the Department of Employment, which has been published through the Job Outlook website and also the LMIP, which is the Labour Market Information Portal. So I'll show you how to navigate your way through all of those, but I'll also take out a couple of the key industry insight findings, and I've rolled them up into a few slides for you as well. Then what we'll do is we'll have a look at SEEK data. And SEEK data covers the real-time supply and demand of candidates, so where are we going to find it really difficult to source talent, and where would we expect to find it a bit easier? And then what sort of salary expectations are being placed out in the market at the moment? So what's on offer, how competitive are you, how do your roles or your offerings sort of marry up, and are you competitive enough? And then looking at what candidates are physically doing on our site, so you understand their journey and what you need to do to capture their interest. So in terms of industry insights, the main source that we've used is the Department of Employment, and a lot of it has been, if you go to Department of Employment directly, what you get is raw numbers. So it's much easier to get stuff that's got a lot of commentary with it and be able to sort of read it and interpret it and think, okay, well, how does that relate to me, to my industry, to my roles? What does it mean? So the website that we've used is joboutlook.gov.au, and I'll reference it a fair bit and I'll show you in a second what it looks like. But the reason for doing that is they've built a lot of narration, a lot of the story out for you. So it's a really great quick reference point. So what I've done is I've taken, I think it's seven different occupational groups, and the Department of Employment reports against 400 different occupational groups. So a really good sample of the different roles that exist within Australia. And then I've mapped the ones that I think are going to be relevant back to this particular category. But because if I just put them all in one big bundle and we had a look at the 5-year employment numbers, it wouldn't tell a very compelling story because we've got so much diversity in here. I thought you guys would be more interested to see, well, what's been happening if it's more relevant to me. So if we look at that building construction industry, it's sort of sitting in that blue bucket, and we've got a number of different roles that I've mapped in there, which I'll show you in more detail in a minute. And that category has grown by 1.9% over the last 5 years. So that's how many people are physically working in that category. Within the IT sector, so we're looking more at those multimedia specialists and web developers, that sort of stuff. That's up 42.6%, whereas designers, when we're looking at, say, fashion or industrial or jewellery designers, interior designers, they've actually been in decline. So what's going to be more helpful is looking at not only how this has looked over the last 5 years, but what is anticipated for the next 5. So the Department of Employment actually build out projections. And for the entire category, it looks to be in pretty healthy growth. You know, we're looking at the category as a whole increase around 12%, but across each of those splits, so if you take into consideration building, that IT and the designer segments that we looked at before, all of them are going to be in increase of over 10%. Now, in comparison to the national average is expected to be around 7.2. So this is slightly higher, which means, you know, it's about 50% higher. So it means that it may be a little bit more challenging in these particular disciplines to find the same number of candidates as what it may be in others. And to really break this apart for you, I've listed out each occupational group, and then I've thrown some colours on the background so you can see what I've clustered together, but then you can see what the actual employment number is and what it's projected to be. So the black column is the actual employment number in 2013, and the grey column is the projected number of candidates in 2018. So you can see areas like graphic and web designers that sit here right in the middle of screen, expected to grow by 15%. And that's quite substantial considering it's a really high base anyway. There's about 50 to 60,000 people employed in that category already. So getting that sort of growth over the next 5 years means there's going to be a bit of pressure. You're going to be competing, you're going to have to be able to move quickly with your sourcing strategies, and it may be slightly more difficult than what it has been in the past. The other area is this architectural building and surveying technicians looking to increase 11%, so more in that building and construction area. And again, it's off a really high base. It's close to 60,000 people currently employed in there, and it's expected to grow by 11%. So the reason why I want to share this with you is because if you're talking to hiring managers, being able to get a really big picture lens of how's the category been moving and how's it expected to grow over the next period is going to help them understand that, you know what, the market's changing. And so doing what we've always done isn't necessarily going to cut it when we go to recruit in the future. So we need to think a little bit more strategically. We may need to move faster. We may need to speed up our recruitment processes. Do we need to have 3 interviews, 4 interviews before we go through psychometric testing? Is that the best path? You know, what is the best way to make sure we get the best talent in the role as quickly as possible? So really good one just to set the scene. I've also grabbed a whole range of insights for each of these roles, and I've thrown them in a table. So you guys should see that up on your screen now, and I'll show you how I get all of this data in a second, but basically we've got the national average in grey. Okay, so we know how many people are employed and what the projected growth is expected to be in Australia, so it's 7.2%. And then across the table you can see what the projected growth is across all of those, and the only ones that are under that 7% growth is interior designers, where it's actually forecasted to be flat. Now, the reason why I like this one is because it also talks about educational level, so the sort of the norm in terms of what the skill level is of individuals within each of these employment groups. And if you were looking for an architectural technician and the hiring manager was saying, you know, we really want someone who's degree qualified, I guess your question could be, well, why? You know, if the majority of people would only hold a Cert 3 or 4, why do you require a degree qualification? You know, would you want someone who had a degree qualification, or would you just want them to have ArchiCAD? You know, would that be sufficient for what the role is that you're actually trying to fill? So being able to challenge their expectations, because what happens is if you take a really narrow brief and you don't get any room to move, you may be actually looking for the small percentiles of individuals, and they may not even exist. So we want to make sure that we're sort of challenging the thought process. You know, across a majority of these roles, they're very male dominated. Only fashion industry and jewelry designers and interior designers are skewed towards the female demographic. So if you have in the organisation a policy to be able to hire to diversity, you sort of need to know the actual makeup of that industry as well. So by looking for an architectural technician that is female and having that as part of your diversity policy, then you're going to be ruling out almost 90% of the working population. So it's something that you need to be aware of so that you're making these decisions in a sound way. All right, so there's lots of information in there. I'll let you digest it at your own time, but the idea is that you can sort of move through it and be able to use it at a glance to be able to challenge things that don't sound right when you're taking the job brief. Now I'm going to show you where I get it from as well. So all you need to do, let me go to the correct web page, is you need to go to joboutlook.gov.au. So you guys should be able to see that on your screen now. When you're in here, there's a lot of information. Now, there's a couple of ways you can actually look for particular occupations, and they've got 400 of them, but they list them in lots of different ways. You can either just type in the role that you're looking for, or you can alphabetically go through and select, which is a little bit of a nightmare. I prefer to type in. So if I was looking for an architect and then hit search, then it would return a whole list of different things that map to architect. And you can see it's got ICT managers, intelligence and policy analysts, so it's got a broad range of different things in here. But say we want, you know, that architectural and building survey technicians that we saw before. Then I click on that one, and it takes me through to a landing page which has lots of information that's specific to that particular occupation group. Now, there's a couple of things you can do. The first thing I would do is I go straight across to the reports and links, and in here they have a PDF. So once that screen loads for you, I'll click on it. They have this PDF link, and what this is a rolled up summary of all the key findings. So that should come up on your screen. And it talks about the employment, the unemployment rate, the number of job openings that are projected to become over the next 5 years, what sort of educational profile is in existence for this demographic, what is the demographic, so the gender, the age profile, how much do they earn, what sort of industries are they working in, and then how has this category either increased or declined over time. So you can sort of get a feel that, you know what, it was tracking up to about 2005, it dropped off a bit, and then it's tracked back up to 2010, then it dropped off a bit, and it's going back through its upward cycle again. But it is expected to increase quite substantially between 2013 and 2018. So it gives you a way to be able to get individual commentaries on each occupational group. If for any reason you either need to build out a position description, or say you're a recruitment consultant and your client says, I don't have time to give you a job brief, just go and write the ad, then what you can do is if you go back to this overview tab, which is the very first one that you would have landed on when you came into the system, if you just scroll down, it tells you the tasks that this type of role would naturally perform. So it can help you build out a lot of the description and the duties if you're building out a PD or if you're building out the job ad itself. So they may assist construction managers, architects and surveyors in planning and organising. They'll interpret plans, regulations and codes of practice. They'll prepare sketches, working drawings and specifications. So at least it gives you an idea of the core components for the role when you actually need to go around creating that job description or even the ad content itself. So I love this site for that purpose. It's very granular. If you're wanting to get a bigger overview of an entire industry, that's when you'd come up to this industry search tab at the top. And if you click on this, it will give you, it's the same information, but they've clustered it into industries. I wouldn't go in there because it's exactly the same information. But what it does give you is this Labour Market Information Portal link. Now, if you click on this link, it will take you into another web page, which is hosted by LMIP, and they have a whole range of projections. Now, the 2019 projections have come out at a top-line industry level. They still haven't come out at a more granular occupational level. So you should see that data I just showed you then around architectural surveyors and technicians. That should come out in the next 2 months. So keep an eye on those. I'll update them again with projections from 2014 to 2019. But in here it gives you really nice summaries. It gives you a report. The 2015 report's really cool. It talks about how you've got growth across 17 out of 19 industries is projected. The only 2 industries that are looking to decline are, say, manufacturing and mining. It talks about why. It has commentary on it. It has the size. It has lots of graphs. So if you're wanting to get a better view of what's happening across Australia, across all industries, and how your industry sits in that, it's a really neat little one to download. So this is an awesome little tool. I'd absolutely reference it. You're going to have it anyway as a URL link, but you can either go straight to lmip.gov.au and the other one was joboutlook.gov.au. So make sure you stay across those 2 really great sources. All right, we're going to jump back into the presentation and I want to take you through the supply and demand data because this is where we start to rationalise that annual reporting that Department of Employment produces. So the Department of Employment updates their data every 12 months or so. SEEK updates their data every month. So you get a really good sample of what's happening right now and what should I be aware of so that I can make sure I'm making the best sourcing strategy decisions. So the first thing we're going to do is look at supply and demand. And supply is basically candidates and demand is job ads. Okay, so if there's a vacancy and there's a candidate, then that is the ratio between supply and demand. So the way that we measure this is not only just at a engaged candidate lens, so we're looking at, say, candidates who are either active or passive that just exist with the capability, so we look at that component. We also look at the volume of ads, and then the crunch point is actually the average applications per ad. And the reason why we come down to that level is because we want to be able to understand not only where the candidates are engaged, but where they're physically engaging with an ad to apply for it, because that's where you'll feel the pain points. Right? If you don't have candidates applying to your ads, you're going to have to change your strategy. So the next screen I'm going to show you is this average applications per ad for design and architecture in Australia. Now, it indexes our applications per ad. So we don't publish absolute numbers. What we publish is the indexed rate of applications. So let's imagine urban design and planning are getting 1 application per ad. Then landscape architecture is getting around the same. Architecture is probably getting close to 2, maybe 1.5 to 2, and then others getting about 2. And same for web interaction, interior design, but then it probably jumps up to about 3 for fashion and textile design. So you can start to see on a scalable level where you'll actually get more candidates or less candidates. But what we've done is we've highlighted those 3 that are most difficult to resource for, just to use as an example in today's session. So what I would do is if a manager has given me a role and they said, look, we need an architect, then I would say, well, it's the 3rd most difficult role to resource for nationally. So how flexible are you going to be? That'd be my first thing that I'd really want to reference, because I need them to understand that I understand that you wanted an architect, but it's not going to necessarily be an easy process. So you and I both have to agree on what we're looking for and how we're going to go about sourcing those candidates and how quickly we're going to move, because we've both set the bar now. We know that they're going to be really, really difficult. So what are we going to do about it? Now, the other thing that I'd want to know is, okay, well, if architects are really difficult to find, where are they? And what we can do here is we can slice this same information, but we look at location, and we look at where active and passive candidates are viewing job ads. Okay, so what you're seeing on this screen here is the amount of times job ads have been viewed, and that could be active or passive candidates, but ultimately it gives us a lens of where the appetite is for those types of roles. So for architects, lion's share of candidates are in New South Wales. So if you're in Queensland and you're looking for an architect, then you'd be wanting to say, well, you know what, the lion's share of candidates aren't here. We may need to go into another market. New South Wales is probably our next best market because it has more than double the candidates in that market. So, you know, it's close to triple. And then Victoria, which has about double. So they're probably our two primary markets. And if we're going to target candidates from interstate, then maybe we need to consider paying relocation costs or sign-on bonuses or adjusting our salary to be able to meet the expectations of those two markets. So are you interested in doing that? Is that something we can consider? So again, it puts downward pressure on that hiring manager to go, oh, wow, okay, well, this is pretty serious. I do need to sort of think about how broad I'm going to take this spec. What do I need to do to make sure we actually get the talent that we want? You know, they may even go, well, you know what, I think you should just target the Queensland market first and see what we get out of it. But then if we're not getting the response, we're going to have to quickly start targeting people in New South Wales. And what's the best way to go around that? Because even though we know applications are low, is that the best sourcing mechanism? Okay, it might be that if we're getting low ad response, maybe we need to be more proactive. Maybe we need to actually search for that talent. Now, when you guys advertise with Seek, you have both capabilities. You can advertise and you can search. Not all of you are doing it though. Okay, so what happens, just to give you sort of a bit of perspective, because it's only changed in the last couple of years, but when your ad goes live on Seek, we use big data algorithms to be able to take the content out of your ad and then run it through our 3.2 million candidate profiles and their CVs, and then return back a sample, I guess, you know, a list of candidates that we would deem as relevant based on the algorithms that we've used. And they sit in our talent search platform just waiting for you to tap in and proactively reach out to those candidates. But not everyone's using it because not everyone comes to Seek to post their ads, so they may not be just aware of this new functionality, but it's free to do, right? We just do it automatically as part of your job ad posting. And then you work out if you want to message them, send the job to them, or you want to just download their CV and connect with them. But you get to choose, but you have that the moment your ad's posted. So it may be that you go, okay, well, maybe that's a better solution. Maybe I should be searching for those candidates rather than just waiting and hoping that they apply. Because not only if you say you're looking for an architect, when you're in there and say you've got your location as Melbourne, when you're in there, you can say, yes, show me all candidates who are located in Melbourne, but you can also say, show me candidates who are willing to relocate to Melbourne. So they could be in, say, New South Wales or Queensland or WA, but they've also put in their settings of their profile that they'd move to Melbourne for the right role. And you would be aware of that, okay, because the profile shows you all that level of detail. So, you know, if you're not using it at the moment, take it offline with me. I really encourage you guys to do it. Like I said, it's free to access, it's free to use. Just get in there, get amongst it. So think about that sourcing strategy. And is an ad going to be exactly what you need? You know, if you're looking at graphic designers, maybe it is. Maybe that is all you need and you're actually getting the right candidates through. If you're not getting the right candidates through, even in a high supply area, I would probably search as well. All right. So are we going to be competitive? That's the big question. You know, it's great that the Department of Employment publishes the average salaries for that occupational group, but what we want to really understand is what are people getting offered out there? And that's what Seek can capture. We don't capture actual salary that is being paid to a candidate. We capture what's being offered because you guys put in your minimum salary band and your maximum salary band, and then we can publish it on a monthly basis. So we can tell you that urban design and planning attracts the highest salary band, anywhere between 82 to 104,000 is the average minimum and average maximum salary being offered. Now, if we're looking at architecture, it's between 70 and 89. So if you have a hiring manager that's saying, you know what, we only want to pay 65,000 for an architect, you can tell them that they're crazy because it's going to be really, really difficult for you to be able to source to that. Okay, they either have to move on the salary or they need to really articulate what the benefits are. And that may well be it, right? It might be that, well, it's going to be with a company that is going to give them lots of career progression. We have mentoring programs, we have car parking, we have discount gym memberships or healthcare programs, you know, and if that's the case, great, let's put that in our advertising to compensate for the lack of salary, because you're going to get outplayed by your competitors every single time if you don't articulate those additional benefits on top of the salary offering. And again, it's just a neat way to be able to uncover, well, what are those extra things? You know, why do we do it? What can we do here? Or it can help them go, wow, the market's actually moved since the last time we've had to advertise. You know, we'd be willing to negotiate. Great. That's sort of information you do need, because if you go in really narrow and say, okay, we're only willing to pay 65K, then you may just lose those really good candidates and you're only looking at C or D grade candidates for your roles. So that's how I think about all of these components of data, is how can we use them to really influence the hiring manager to give you more robust information that you can use in your brief, and then be able to formulate really strategic sourcing solutions. So whether that be advertising alone, searching alone, combination of both, but the process that you'll take, you may need to speed up. You may need to have a fast-tracked recruitment process. It may be that we know these candidates are in high supply, so let's lock in interview times now, because if we don't lock them in your diary, then those candidates, once we get them, are going to be placed somewhere else by the time we get around to locking it out your diary, Mr. Hiring Manager. Okay, so just thinking ahead, what do we need to pre-prepare for so we can really move the dial on these candidates? In terms of what candidates are actually doing when they come to the Seek website, I think the biggest ground shaker in the last 5 years has been the shift towards mobile. So 5 years ago, it was less than 2% of all of our traffic was via a mobile device. Today, it's more than 59%. So experiencing your own ads is a really neat step. I would definitely go back in through a smartphone and search for one of your ads, see how they compare to other people's ads who have written them as well. Would you click on it? Would you click on that little summary that you wrote? And if so, when you get to your ad, would you stay there, or do you feel overwhelmed? You know, is the content too dense? Is it not structured well enough? Is it too wordy? Is it too hard for them to pick up the main points? And then I would also go through the application process. Is it easy? Can they click on apply and complete it in a really seamless fashion? Now, if you get roadblocks anywhere along that path, that's what I'd be focusing on over the next 12 months. I think it's really important that we're looking at that whole mobile solution as if desktop no longer exists. Okay, people still use desktop, you know, it's still 40% of our traffic is via a desktop computer, but if we're planning for the future state, I would definitely be thinking about a world where it was mobile oriented, and we want to be able to make sure that you're going to be ahead of the pack. Okay, there's about more than 30% of applications are via mobile today, but largely that's because companies don't have a mobile optimized application process, so candidates are forced to go back to desktop to complete their application. So think about a world where candidates can do everything from a mobile device. Let's keep them in that environment. Let's make it really easy. Let's make it enjoyable. The other behaviors, and you'll see these blue bubbles on the screen, they don't all add up, right? Because people use a combination of fields when they search. One thing that does stand out is that location is pretty important. You know, 72% of visits include a location. So people are going to be pretty specific about where they want to work. So make sure that you're always incorporating as narrow a location as you can. So if you put in Sydney, put in the specific area of Sydney. If you put in Melbourne, is it CBD and inner suburbs, or is it somewhere else? So thinking about what area breakdown are we going to use, because the more granular you can be, the more relevant it becomes to candidates as well. But keyword, you can see that's the other big bucket. And 70% of people use keyword to help either refine their search or just to be able to get to the most relevant ad as quickly as possible. And when people use keywords, they're typically skewed towards a job title. So my advice here would be, don't use fancy job titles. Okay, we just want job titles that make sense, that candidates can relate to. Okay, I'm a graphic designer, great, put in graphic designer. If it's a skill, then what skill is it? Is it CAD? Is it AutoCAD? Is it ArchiCAD? Is it Revit? You know, that's the sort of combination that people are using. You don't need your keyword to be listed millions of times either. We only count it once. If you put AutoCAD into your ad once, you put it in 50 times. We only count it once. Okay, so don't feel you have to load it in heaps and heaps and heaps to get you better matching to candidates. It doesn't work that way. We use a whole broad range of algorithms to give the candidates best match. So the key things that I take out of this for today is really understand your candidate market. You know, the one that we've covered today, design and architecture, is pretty broad. It covers probably 3 industries, in fact. So think about your niche area and what do you need to know? How can you pick it apart? How can you know it inside and out? And how can you stay on top of either annual data from the Department of Employment or even monthly data from SEEK, so that you can be across what the supply and demand looks like, what the growth looks like, and how you're going to position yourself as a subject matter expert? Because what you need to be doing is really influencing those hiring managers. You know, you don't want to rework that brief. You don't want to be taking a brief that is so narrow it is impossible to fill the role and you just have to come back and start again. Okay, we want to be able to provide consultative advice that is backed off not only your expertise and your experience in the industry, but independent data as well to help you influence them in the right direction. And once you've done that, really diversify your sourcing strategies. Make sure you're using and optimizing everything you possibly can out of the SEEK environment. So it's not just job posting alone, it's also thinking about how can you use our big data algorithms to be able to search for the talent you want. And if you can do that, you'll be sensational at positioning yourself as a subject matter expert. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to stay on the line and answer any questions. So please type away if you'd like to answer those now. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found that useful and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. Thanks again.